Hey everyone, and welcome back for another deep dive with us. Today we're going to be looking at William Henry Hance,
Oh, yeah.
an American serial killer, and this one is really interesting. It's a fascinating case,
Absolutely.
full of twists and turns. We're
Yeah,
going to be talking about criminal psychology and the justice system.
for sure.
And
Right at time.
we've got some excerpts here from Hance's Wikipedia page,
Okay.
which detail his crimes, his trial, and execution. And as you'll see, this case is much more than a straightforward true crime story.
Yeah. You know what makes this deep dive so interesting is
Yeah.
the context surrounding his crimes. So not only did he commit some horrific murders,
Right.
he also tried to frame a vigilante group
Really?
for his crimes. And this was a move that speaks volumes about the racial dynamics of the time.
Wow. Okay, so to set the scene, we're in Columbus, Georgia in 1978,
All right.
and the city is already on edge because of these stalking strangler killings.
Right.
These were a series of murders targeting elderly white women. So imagine, the pressure
Oh, yeah.
on investigators.
Absolutely.
They're trying to solve these crimes.
Yeah.
And then on top of that,
Right.
they get a letter
What?
written on U.S. Army stationery
Oh, wow.
claiming to be from a group calling themselves the Forces of Evil.
This is wild. So this letter claimed to be from a group of
Okay.
7 white vigilantes,
Uh-huh.
and they were holding a black woman hostage.
Oh, my gosh.
They threatened to kill her if the police didn't find the stalking strangler, who at the time everyone thought was a black man.
Gosh.
What's really chilling about all of this is that the real killer Hance
Yeah?
was trying to pin these crimes on a fictional black man.
Wow.
He was exploiting the racial tensions of the time to deflect suspicion from himself.
And it wasn't just the racial element that was so disturbing.
Yeah.
The letters also demanded a $10,000 ransom
Wow.
to keep the alleged hostage, Gail Jackson, alive.
Jeez.
So talk about just turning up the heat on an already intense investigation.
Oh my gosh.
Then he even made phone calls to the police,
Oh, really?
weaving this web of lies
Wow.
further and further.
It's a truly elaborate hoax.
Right.
And for a while, it seemed like he was getting away with it. But then enters FBI profiler Robert K. Ressler.
Oh, yeah, wrestler.
Yeah. Now, you might have heard of Ressler. He was a pioneer
Yeah.
in the field of criminal profiling, and his insights in this case were crucial.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
He was amazing.
So Ressler, he didn't just look at the surface details of the case.
Right.
He dug deep into the psychology of the offender.
Right.
Through careful analysis of the letters and the phone calls, he concluded that the killer was likely a single person,
Okay.
black, not well educated,
Yeah.
and probably a low-ranking military man stationed at the fort.
So it was a
Yeah.
really controversial approach at the time,
Yeah.
but it turned out to be spot on.
Oh, yeah, it was spot on. And one of the things that made Ressler's work so groundbreaking was his ability to connect seemingly insignificant details
Right.
to the killer's personality and background. For example, he noticed that the language used in the letters was overly formal.
Interesting.
And it kind of suggested that this was somebody trying to sound more educated than they actually were.
Right.
And this, combined with the military stationery and knowledge of the area around the fort,
Uh-huh.
helped him build a surprisingly accurate profile.
Wow. And using Ressler's profile,
Yes.
investigators started to focus their search near the fort,
Okay.
particularly in bars frequented by black patrons.
Mm-hmm.
And wouldn't you know it, they quickly identified William Henry Hance,
Wow.
an E4 specialist working as a truck driver in an artillery unit at Fort Benning.
And when they confronted Hance with the evidence, handwriting samples, voice recording, shoe prints from the crime scenes,
Okay.
he confessed.
Yeah.
He admitted to killing Gail Jackson and Irene Thurkield, and even confessed to a third murder, Karen Hickman, who was killed at Fort Benning in 1977.
So he's confessed to 3 murders.
Yes.
And there's even a possible link to the death of a young black woman at Fort Benjamin Harrison in Indiana.
Right.
Although he was never charged with that crime.
Yeah.
But here's the thing.
What's that?
Hance was completely innocent of the stalking strangler killings.
Oh, really?
Yeah, those murders were eventually attributed to another man named Carlton Gary.
Wow.
So can you imagine the confusion at the time?
I can only imagine.
You've got 2 seemingly unconnected sets of murders happening at the same time.
At the same time.
And one is shrouded in this bizarre vigilante hoax.
It's a testament to how challenging criminal investigations can be.
Right.
especially when you have multiple offenders
Yeah.
operating in the same area at the
Yeah.
same time.
Absolutely.
But with Hance's confession, this case was far from over.
Right, because his confession was just the beginning of a really long and complicated
Yes.
legal journey.
Yeah, it really is. It's like we're about to enter a legal labyrinth here.
Right.
And trust me,
Oh, boy.
it's about to get even more intricate.
Oh, gosh.
Hance's case spanned both military and civilian courts,
Oh,
with convictions, appeals, overturned sentences.
really?
And at the heart of it all was a question that would haunt this case until the very end.
Okay.
Was William Henry Hance mentally competent to stand trial?
That's a big question.
A huge question, and it's one we'll delve into in just a moment.
Right.
But first, we need to take a quick look
Okay.
at the intricacies of these legal proceedings.
Okay.
Because this is where the real complexities of the Hance case
Right.
begin to unfold.
Okay.
So, welcome back to our deep dive into the William Henry Hance case.
Yeah, this case is pretty intense, huh?
Oh, it really is. As we were just discussing,
Yeah.
Hance's confession really set off this
Uh-huh.
chain of legal proceedings
Yeah.
that would raise some really serious questions about the American justice system.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We left off talking about the trials and convictions.
Right.
And it's here that the story, takes this turn
It does.
that's both shocking and, well, sadly, not all that surprising.
Yeah.
When you consider, the historical context
Right.
of race and justice in America.
Absolutely.
See, Hance was initially convicted
Oh.
in a military court
Uh-huh.
for the murders of Irene Thurkield
Right.
and Karen Hickman,
Okay.
but was never tried for these crimes in a civilian court.
So he was tried.
However, he was tried and convicted in a civilian court for the murder of Gail Jackson.
Okay. So this.
Now, this is where things get complicated.
Okay.
His sentences were overturned and reinstated multiple times
Oh, well.
due to legal technicalities.
And these legal technicalities
That's right.
weren't the only complexities at play here.
Exactly.
Like the central issue, the one that would really come to define
Yeah.
the controversy of this case,
Yeah.
was the question
Okay.
of Hance's mental competency. You see, Hance had an IQ that fell within the range of borderline intellectual functioning. Now, to understand the significance of this,
Yeah.
you have to think about what it really means to be competent to stand trial.
Yeah, it raises all sorts of questions.
Oh, absolutely,
Right.
about whether...
Could someone with Hance's level of, intellectual ability
Right.
really grasp the complexities
Yeah.
of a legal proceeding?
Did he even understand, the charges against him?
Right,
The
exactly.
potential consequences of a guilty verdict?
How could he
Yeah.
possibly understand all of the intricacies
Right.
of mounting a legal defense?
These were questions that,
I see.
legal experts and ethicists really grappled with.
They did, and those questions became even more urgent
Right.
and troubling in light of what happened during Hance's second sentencing trial. Now, remember,
Yeah.
his first sentencing trial had been thrown out
Oh, right. Yeah.
because of prosecutorial misconduct,
Wow.
which already kind of casts a shadow of doubt, right?
Oh, yeah. Over the fairness
Yeah.
of the legal process he was being subjected to.
Of course.
But what happened in that second trial,
Yeah.
and more importantly, what came to light afterwards,
Yeah.
exposed a really disturbing reality.
So one of the jurors from that second trial,
Yeah.
a white woman named Patricia LeMay,
Okay.
came forward with some unsettling information.
Oh, really?
She revealed that other jurors had made blatantly racist remarks
Wow.
about Hance
Oh, my God.
during their deliberations,
Jeez.
using really horrific language,
Yeah.
expressing explicitly racist sentiments.
And this wasn't just casual prejudice, right? I
No.
mean, these were statements that revealed a deep-seated bias
Yeah,
against
yeah.
Hance just based solely on his race.
Exactly. And what's even more disturbing is that the only black juror,
Oh, gosh.
a young woman named Gail Lewis Daniels,
Right.
was subjected to intense pressure
Oh.
and racial slurs
Oh, no.
to coerce her into voting for the death penalty.
It's hard to imagine.
Yeah, I know. It's hard to imagine the pressure
Yeah.
and the intimidation that Daniels must have felt.
To be the only voice of dissent
Right.
in a room
Yeah.
filled with such overt racism,
Right.
with the weight of a man's life hanging in the balance,
Exactly.
it must have been absolutely terrifying.
And tragically, Daniels,
Yeah,
feeling
I know.
threatened and isolated,
Right.
was too afraid to speak up
Oh, my God.
when the jury was pulled in court.
Wow.
So they reported a unanimous decision for the death penalty,
Even though it wasn't.
even though it wasn't truly unanimous.
Wow.
Can you imagine how that must have felt for her?
Gosh, I can't even imagine.
To be complicit in a decision that went against her conscience?
Yeah.
A decision that was fueled by the very prejudice she herself had likely experienced.
Oh, that's awful.
I know. This revelation about the jury deliberations,
Yeah.
it just sent shockwaves through the legal community and the media.
Absolutely.
Suddenly, it wasn't just about the legal technicalities
Right.
or even Hance's mental competency.
Right.
It was about the very foundation of justice, the idea that everyone deserves a fair trial,
Yeah.
free from prejudice and intimidation.
Right. And in Hance's case.
And in this case,
Yeah.
that fundamental right had been undeniably violated.
Hance's case became a stark illustration
It really did.
of how deeply entrenched racial bias can be,
Yeah.
even within a system that's supposed to be, blind to such prejudices.
Yeah.
It forced people to confront this really uncomfortable reality
He did, yeah.
that the pursuit of justice isn't always as straightforward or impartial.
Right. And it really raised this profound question.
Yeah.
How many other cases might have been decided under similar circumstances where racial bias played this, hidden but decisive role
Yeah.
in determining someone's fate?
It's a chilling thought
Yeah.
that really casts a long shadow over the entire concept of justice, right?
Right. Especially when the ultimate penalty is at stake.
Exactly.
Now, alongside these horrifying revelations about racial prejudice in the jury room,
Yeah.
there's another layer of complexity we need to unpack here.
Okay.
The question of Hance's mental state.
Right.
We already touched on this.
Yeah.
But it's crucial to delve deeper
Yeah.
into how his borderline intellectual functioning
Right.
played into
Right.
the ethical and legal debates
Exactly.
surrounding his case.
We're dealing with some really weighty
Absolutely.
moral and legal questions.
Was it even just to execute someone who may not have fully grasped
Yeah.
the gravity of their actions
Right.
or the finality of the punishment?
Could someone with Hance's intellectual limitations
Yes.
truly understand
Yeah.
what it meant to be sentenced to death?
It's a really hard question. These questions weren't just hypothetical.
No, they weren't. I mean, they were at the heart of
Right.
many appeals filed on Hance's behalf.
Yeah.
And, they continue to be debated
Where they still are. And
in death penalty cases.
how can we ensure?
Right. How can we ensure that individuals
Yeah.
with intellectual disabilities aren't subjected to a punishment
Yeah.
they may not even fully comprehend?
Right. It's a huge dilemma with no easy answers.
No, it's not.
And while we can't undo the past, Hance's case serves as this powerful reminder
Yes,
that we need to be incredibly careful and thorough when we're considering these factors.
Absolutely.
Especially when someone's life is on the line.
Exactly. It
Yeah.
forces us to confront the limitations
Yeah.
of our legal system, right?
It does.
And the uncomfortable reality that sometimes, even with the best intentions,
Right.
justice can be elusive
Right.
and deeply flawed.
So I'm sure our listeners are wondering what happened next.
I bet they are.
Did Hance's execution proceed?
Right?
Despite these revelations and concerns about his mental state.
All very valid questions.
We'll answer that question
We will.
and explore the lasting implications of this case when we return
We will.
for the final part of our deep dive.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're back.
I were.
And this is the final part of our
Yeah.
deep dive into the William Henry Hance case.
That's right.
And you've heard about his crimes,
Ah.
this elaborate hoax that he created,
Right.
the legal battles, the racial bias,
Yeah.
and all those questions about his mental competency.
Huge questions.
So I'm sure everybody is wondering
I would imagine so.
what ultimately happened to him.
Well, despite all the controversy, all
Yeah.
the appeals, and all the ethical questions
Right.
swirling around his case, William Henry Hance was executed on March 31st, 1994,
Oh, wow.
by the state of Georgia
Oh, my
via
goodness.
electric chair.
So it was an ending that a lot of people found really unsettling,
I can imagine.
given the revelations about the jury deliberations
Yeah.
and those lingering doubts
Yeah.
about his mental capacity. But the story doesn't end there.
It doesn't. Hance's case, even in death, continued to raise important questions about the American justice system. One of the most powerful voices of dissent came from Justice Harry Blackmun,
Okay.
who, in his dissenting opinion,
Right.
expressed profound concerns
Yeah.
about Hance's mental state and the potential influence of racial bias in this case.
Right. He argued that even if he hadn't already, like, concluded that the death penalty was unconstitutional.
Right, exactly.
He couldn't support its use in Hance's case.
It's really something. So Blackman, he pointed to all the substantial evidence
Okay.
of Hance's intellectual impairments
Uh-huh.
and argued that these impairments should have been given more weight
Right.
when they were figuring out his sentence.
Of course, and he also highlighted the testimony
Aye.
of juror Patricia LeMay,
Yeah.
who revealed those racist remarks
Mm-hmm.
and all that pressure that had tainted the jury's deliberations.
Blackman's dissent became a rallying cry
Yeah,
for those who saw Hance's execution as a miscarriage of justice.
it really did.
It brought into sharp focus
Yeah.
these complex ethical and legal dilemmas.
Right. And it's important to remember that
Yeah.
this case isn't an isolated incident.
No, it's not.
It reflects those broader systemic issues
Yeah.
within the justice system.
Sadly, it does.
It forces us to confront these really uncomfortable truths
It does.
about,
Yeah.
prejudice
Yeah.
and legal outcomes.
Right.
So as we conclude this deep dive,
Okay.
I kind of want to leave everyone with some final thoughts
Sounds good.
to ponder.
All right.
How has this case changed your understanding of the justice system?
Good question.
What are your views on the death penalty, especially in light of everything we've discussed?
Yeah, these aren't easy questions to answer, but they're questions that we as a society
Yeah,
really need to grapple with.
absolutely. And the pursuit of justice
Yes,
is an ongoing process, and cases like this just remind us
it's true.
that we can't afford to be complacent. We must constantly strive for a system that's fair
Absolutely.
and impartial,
Yeah.
and that upholds the rights of all people.
Yes.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the William Henry Hance case.
Appreciate you having me.
Absolutely. We hope this has sparked some insightful reflections and inspired you to learn more about this stuff.
Yeah, me too.
And we hope to see you on our next deep dive.
See you next time.